fascinating window into understanding the environment around us. From migration patterns that can span continents to their complex calls, birds provide scientists and naturalists alike with crucial insights into the health of ecosystems, impacts of climate change, and patterns of biodiversity that define our world. But beyond their scientific importance, birds also invite us to slow down and observe, offering a unique lens through which we can connect with the natural world. Today, we're diving into these connections, exploring how bird migration, listening to their calls, and engaging in practices like nature journaling and observation can deepen our understanding of the environment, strengthen our communities, and remind us of the value of paying attention to the details in the world around us. I'm Nomin Rentsendorj, a student researcher at Rice University for Gulf Streams, and you're listening to Gulf Streams on KPFT Houston 90.1 FM, Galveston 89.5 FM, and Huntsville 89.7 FM, where we talk with leading experts and community leaders to better understand the environmental problems and potential solutions facing our community. A quick reminder that you can catch up on Gulf Streams anytime through our podcast, available on all major podcast platforms. If you enjoy the show, please like and subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. I had the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Cin-Ty Lee, a distinguished geologist, petrologist, and geochemist here at Rice University, whose work explores the evolution of our planet from its mantle to the atmosphere, and whose passion for birding and natural observation goes far beyond his scientific research. Let's get started. So, Dr. Lee, I know from your class that I took with you that you've been journaling your observations for quite some time. So how did you start journaling, and why have you continued it for so long?
Well, I probably started journaling when I was a kid. This was back before there were a lot of cameras and good cameras, and so the old-fashioned way to document what you see in the fields is just to write notes, take sketches. So I should mention, when I was a kid, I got very interested in birds and nature, just wandering around my house or the area behind my house, looking at natural habitats, the animals, the birds, and then, in the beginning it was just looking at them, but then I had one of my dad's friends came by and said, you really should try to learn these things better and identify them, and one way is to take notes. And he gave me this book. It was actually called How to Take Notes. And
very basic.
Yeah, I still have that, and I was looking through it. Oh, okay. So I got a little book, and I was probably 10, and I had a diary, and I would just go and just first in the beginning would just write what I saw, just the names of the things I saw. So nothing special, and then.
Were you able to identify?
Well,
anything?
In the beginning, there the simple things you could identify, but as I got deeper and deeper in, realizing, oh my gosh, there are a lot of things I don't know. I got a field guide. That same friend gave me a field guide to birds, and so I was flipping through that, and so when I go to the fields, go out and look at birds, I kept my field guide out, but then I also began to learn that if you would draw them, because your mind forgets things, so drawing them helps you remember and really study the bird, and it was fun. I like drawing birds, so.
I think you showed us in class, you had an observation from high school or college?
Yeah.
It was from a really long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess how have you just maintained it for so long?
Well, I have to admit, I don't maintain it so well today because
okay, that makes sense.
I'm so busy with a lot of things, and then we also have some of the digital ways to document the surroundings. Like you're recording this right now, or I may have a video camera, or I have a camera photographing things, and then we put the data into a computer. So the traditional way of just writing notes is something I don't do as much, and I regret it because it is nice to. I have reams of these notebooks that go back to, gosh, now it must be 30 years, and I can open it up and I can see what I wrote, where I was.
Yeah.
And with the putting it in the digital database, that you can still see that too. But there's something different about being able to open the book up and flip through the pages, and you were there. You remember that you were there writing everything down and drawing. So I still do it, but not as often.
How has it kind of evolved? With the introduction of cameras that are really accessible, especially with our phone. You can just pull it out and just take a picture anywhere, basically.
Yeah, I think it's evolved in good and bad ways. The good way is, of course, you're able to document so much out there, and of course when you're drawing things you can't capture everything and the birds are moving, and you may only capture a fraction of what you see out there, but you are capturing that connection you made with a very specific bird, which I don't think taking photos enables you to do. Usually with photos, it's so easy, and I'm guilty of it. I carry a camera everywhere I go, and you take a picture and then you're done, and you go on to the next one, and then you can go home and look at it. But you don't really capture the moment. You can miss a lot of things with just photographing, in terms of behavior and its context and the feeling you got when you were out there. But yeah, right now when I go out, I have my recording device. I have cameras. We document everything, and it's very fast paced, which is good, but it's also bad. We lost sort of that slow paced approach of really studying birds. Like the class that I taught with you all. I also teach one for kind of continuing education. They're mostly retired folks, and I just got back from that today. It's a nature journaling class. So we
at Rice, or
it's through the Glasscock. Yeah. So they're not traditional students. They're students. They're coming. They're after they've retired.
Okay.
In their 60s and usually older, and it's parts. So we took them to different places around Rice, outside of Houston, and look at nature. And the journaling is not so much how to turn you to an artist or a beautiful writer or anything like that, but it was just to slow you down so you kind of look at things in a different way and just hone your observation skills. And then the whole act of drawing or sketching or writing helps you see these things, I think. And it's great for scientists, but it's also great for
everybody.
Whatever field you're in, I have a big belief that observational skills are absolutely crucial. Those who can observe details are better than those who just take everything for granted or just overstand. And as we get older, we tend to forget about this thing. And I watch little kids, they have no baggage, and they go out, they see all these things that even my kid, I may have seen this bird for 30 years in my life and think I know everything about the bird. Then my kid comes out and he notices it's flying in a funny way, and he goes, "Dad," and it's totally innocent. It's not like he's trying to prove anything or anything. He just noticed. That's
just what he noticed.
He just noticed, yeah. Oh, and just like when I was in the class, the FWIS with you all, that and I enjoy taking people out because they always see something that I didn't see. And you may think, oh, it's not a big deal, but like, wow, I've never seen that, and I saw it through your eyes. So I love that, and so teaching the class, like sort of bringing all of us back to our childhood, I suppose. Yeah.
Going back to the class, the question I have is, what are some ways that we can use the environment just around us, like in our everyday lives, or not necessarily use, but
to be part of it, or to
to be part of it, to experience it. Yeah.
Well, I think going out and observing everything around you, including the built environment, but just noticing that there's life, not just human life, but animal, plant life everywhere. And just once you start to really open your eyes and your ears to all these sounds, and your other senses, you start to see the world in a different way. So, of course, you can go out to the national wildlife refuges, the state parks. They're a little further afield, but even in your backyard, even on the campus of Rice, or even in downtown, look around. There's a bird that may fly over. There's bugs. Some people may not like bugs, but
there's a lot of bugs.
Mosquitoes. You might see them, and you look at the soil, look how the leaves fall, look how the leaves change color. I guess, I don't know. I guess I see, when I go out, I feel like there's so much to see. And, of course, sometimes you have to not pay attention. Otherwise, you won't get very far. You only walk 10 feet in an hour. but the nice thing about nature, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And so if you're bored,
Walk
just go
outside.
out and go look outside.
That's true. Going back to your birding, I know you have a really extensive library of bird calls that you started in COVID, right?
Well, I've always been recording bird songs, but COVID was a very specific type of
Okay.
recordings, and that was we had trained the microphones up towards the skies, and we run it every single night and to see what flies over. And that's sort of just passive recording. In the past, it would be more active. I'm out in the field and I hear something, and then I would take a microphone or a shotgun microphone and point it directly at the bird and record specifically that bird. But yeah, during COVID, we started listening to the migratory birds flying over.
Why was it important for
To do that?
Yeah, to do that, essentially.
Well, the motivation for recording what's going over, part of it was during COVID we were very bored, and we didn't.
That's true.
We were in lockdown. We couldn't go anywhere, and so we were trying to find things to do. And one of my very close friends, a birder and also a co-author of one of my books, he also kind of got interested in that at the same time. And in the beginning, we just put it up for experiment. And other people have been doing this, a few other people. And so there was always hints. It was already well known that most birds migrate in the night, and they do give these calls, contact calls, presumably to keep each other aware of each other when they're flying and they can't see in the dark. And most of the people doing this are over on the East Coast, because that's where it got started and pioneered. And it hadn't been done so much here in Texas, partly because in general it's sort of an obsession. You got to be pretty obsessed to do this, and you have to have the technical equipment. You have to have time to do that. We had a lot of time during COVID. I couldn't go anywhere, so we started doing that, and we started to detect all these migrants, start to see these patterns. And then once we started seeing that, we realized we couldn't stop. We just keep doing it. So I'm on my 5th year now doing this, and I just recording pretty much every single night for 6 months, more than 6 months out of the year we record. And the goal is to just keep going,
expanding
as long as I can, to see if there are any patterns. When I think climate change, I think there's a long-term progression, right, of change, but superimposed on any of this long-term are fluctuations, stochastic fluctuations. So it's very hard to say if this year something is very high, if that's by itself climate change. You have to look at the long term, and I think you have to be very careful, because you could say, well,
everything is climate change.
Today this is really this year, say it's really warm. Is that climate change? But it may be related. But then the next year it gets really cold, and then you say, well, then that's not climate change, right? No, but those are fluctuations on top of a trend, and so I think the climate change, you have to look at that trend. We've been collecting these nocturnal flight calls for now on my 5th year, stuff flying in the spring and in the fall too, and finally started analyzing this data. And some of these grassland birds, like grasshopper sparrow, this is a bird that's very secretive. You won't see it. They hide deep in the grass, and you almost have to burn the grass to see it, or you have to, I don't know, you won't see it. But they breed up in Montana and Alberta, in the prairies there, which is where that's like a breadbasket of this country, the prairies of the north for agriculture. And so their habitats have shrunk there. But that area, interesting, is always on the edge of like some sort of environmental crisis, because it's situated in a place where it's too far north and west of the humid air currents that come from the Gulf of Mexico. And then, but just enough that it does get the water. So it's not a desert, but it's not humid. So it just fluctuates year by year. Some years it could be in drought.
Mm.
And some years it can be really good. If there's a La Nina, it does very well. So very sensitive. And there's places like that where climate change can push something to the limit, because it's, may push you more and more close to that edge where these fluctuations that are normal, and not climate change itself, but because climate change pushes you to the edge, more to the edge than it already is, then the fluctuations have a bigger impact, the natural fluctuations. And so when that sparrow that lives up there or breeds up there, has their babies up there, almost the entire population winters in Texas, and they pass through Rice, or they pass through the Houston area, and we record them. And what we found is just amazing, that the numbers that we see down there, this is 3,000 miles away, by the way, correlate with the precipitation.
Oh, wow.
There, which is not maybe surprising to you, because if it's drought, you'd think they die. But no one's ever seen that. No one's ever seen such a direct correlation. And we a lot of things we hypothesize, we think, but to actually have data that shows it or disagrees with it. We have a lot of data that, well, it's just not statistically significant. So it may be, other people's data, not mine. Where it doesn't correlate, or does, maybe. You don't know if that's due to your sampling problems. And there are a lot of issues. Like I said, you can't see these birds.
Yeah.
So if you send someone out to go count them, they're not going to see them. They have to be very, very skilled to find them.
Yeah.
So, and this is where, if you don't send the right person out, or that person dies or retires, and you send a new person, you're just not going to. So the surveys are all a mess. But what we're doing is, this microphone is just, there's no bias to it.
Yeah.
And so we get rid of all, and it's continuous. So
it's just the raw data.
It's just beautiful, because other ways of surveying, even if you have the skilled person, they can't do it every single day, 24/7.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you just never could. So we are able to do it, and we finally, for the first time, see a correlation.
Yeah.
And it's just more. So that means, basically, if something happens up there in June, then within 3 or 4 months, we see the effect here in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're, what I'm so excited, I know we're digressing from all this, but I'm so excited about it is that if we're going up there and wanting to mitigate the grasslands, I don't know, for preserving the birds, or for carbon sequestration or carbon credits or something, we really don't know the response. You have to sometimes wait for 10 years to see, did your conservation practices work? Does your carbon credits, do they mean anything? You have to wait years.
Yeah.
You can't wait years if do all this change, and you have to wait 5 years or 10 years to find out that you screwed up.
Yeah.
Right. We with this bird is our canary. We know within 4 months.
Oh, yeah.
And that is true. Amazing.
Yeah.
You know in 4 months what happened.
The time frame is shortened.
It's short. And it's real. It's almost real time, right? 4 months is about as good as you can get. So that means if something went wrong there, then next year we can adapt, and we can do that. So changing the ecosystem, it's slow, right? Mm-hmm. So to be able to see an effect in 4 months is amazing.
Yeah.
Or see the impacts of what you did or didn't do. So one of the things with really recording and analyzing the sounds of what goes over is it's a whole new world when you really deeply get into recording, because you want high quality sounds, and so you notice all the noise, all the different types of noise. It's so noisy everywhere, right? And your ears get so tuned to these noises, to any sounds. And by studying these, so now when I go out, like a bird flies and does one little and I know what it is. Yeah. And flying over, and everyone's who doesn't do this is very amazed. Like, if you sorry about that. If you do this for as much as we do, your ears become like a whole different, like a beast. You just
Yeah.
hear. In fact, you hear so much that that I have to admit, after a year of doing that, my I get ears are a bit sensitive. I get really annoyed by loud sounds or just noise that other people, it's in the background.
Misophonia.
Yeah, it's in the background, and then but I hear it, and it drives me crazy sometimes.
That's interesting. One of the questions I want to ask is, most people don't go out and go birding.
Yeah.
But what is the motivation behind that? Like the most essential motivation. Like
To
why
go
should
bird
people?
watching?
Yeah, just go bird
Why should people
watching.
just go out? Actually, during COVID, we saw the biggest increase in the number of bird watchers.
That makes sense.
People got really bored and had to do something. I try to, of course, get people interested in nature and birds, but I don't want to force it. I think people have to kind of discover it on their own. But there is something of just going out into nature. We're so glued to our screens, doing the things we have to do to stay alive and make money. But when you go out there, everything slows down. You can start to see all these connections between living things, and I think it's a very different world. It's a peaceful world. You begin to feel that your place in the world is a little bit different than just the rat race of making money, and the beauty of it. There's just when you see a bird or see or even a plant, and watch the plant grow or watch it change through the seasons, it is a very beautiful thing. The other thing with birds, or anything in nature, is I believe that there is a deep healing power to it, or a way for, even if you're not healing, for sort of mental health in a broadest sense. And I mean, I can speak for myself. When I was growing up as a teenager, during that time, birding was not cool. Now birding is kind of cool. People think
it's shifted.
It's really shifted. Back then, I remember when I was a teenager, I remember once I was birding, and I saw my high school classmates walking by. I said, "Oh, hide the binoculars, pretend that," because it was so uncool. But for me, it was very important because I had a lot of trouble growing up, being bullied. I wasn't a very big kid, and I was not. There weren't many Asians around where I was, so I got bullied and beat up a lot of time. So I don't think I was doing too well. My self-esteem, and I wasn't like the stereotypical, Asian kid who's the top in the math. So it's like, well, damn, I can't do math so well, or I can't do. I like math now, but then, yeah, and so it was tough. But the birds gave me an escape, and I really enjoyed it, and I became good at it, and it kind of helped me build my own confidence, and in many ways, I would say it saved my life.
Yeah.
Other people have different ways of coping, but
of course,
birds just happen to be the way. But I've met many people. I have a friend who was in Iraq in the war as a sniper, and he saw a lot of things that were bad, and he came back with PTSD and very depressed, and then he discovered birds and gardening, and he changed his backyard into a bird habitat, and it saved his life, and he just loves the birds. It's just completely different, and he's very good at photographing birds in flight, and I think that's from his sniper days. But
that makes sense.
Yeah, but he himself tells me how much this has saved his life. I know another friend of mine where sadly her son passed away at a very young age, in the 20s, and um, and she became a birder after that, and went deep in. And what happened was, the day her son passed, a hummingbird came by and landed in front of her.
Oh wow.
And what does that mean? But for her, it means something. And she went in, and she goes all into the birds, and that's her coping, and how she stays connected with her passed away son and stuff. So there's, and I can go on. There's many people. If you talk to a lot of the birds, you'll actually find many of them have found that this has really helped them. It could be anyone from someone they were a teenager to someone who's 60 years old discovering it late in their life.
Yeah.
And there's another one. There's a professor here who got Parkinson's a while ago, and he came through more on the photography side, but he got obsessed with photographing birds, and that's kept him, helped him. You can't heal from the Parkinson's, but it stabilizes it, gives him some meaning to what he's doing in life, because he can't do his other things anymore. With Parkinson's. So, and it doesn't have to be birds. It could be people gardening, plants, just anything that gets you. But nature is a very good avenue for sort of healing. Yeah.
That makes sense. For people who want to get into it, or not just birding in general, but maybe just natural observation in general, what would you say is the first step?
Getting in, of course, seems difficult at first, but one, just go out, but and try. But the two things I would do was see if you can find someone to mentor you, and that maybe you may not know anyone in your circle, but you can look at local organizations like, say, the Houston Audubon Society. There's other nature organizations. Sometimes they lead field trips. Sometimes, and many times for beginners. So just show up on those. We have a rice bird walk every Tuesday at 7:30, and it's part of a series of bird walks that Houston Audubon runs all across the county, and maybe even beyond the county. And many I've known. There are probably 250 on the list, but over the years, the last 20 years, it's probably been 400, and I know many has started birding on that walk. Or they may have started somewhere else, just being, but coming on the walk was how they gradually got into the community, or they met other people and they started birding with other people. So you can also meet other people too.
So it's a good way to build community too.
Yes. And in fact, I know one couple that got married. They met on that bird walk. It took them a while to get married.
So you're gonna find love.
It took them a while to get married, but they're married, and they're still married, which is so that's one way. Find some people that can show you, and then get a field guide. But there are these great apps for birds. Merlin app is great at identifying calls. It's like Shazam for birds.
That's helpful.
It's unbelievable, and sometimes it's not exactly right, but for the most part, it's pretty darn good. And then there's that comes out of the Cornell lab of ornithology, and then there's iNaturalist, which is also good for birds, but good for everything else too, insects, plants. We use that.
I remember.
And that lowers the entry level so easily. So you just take pictures, and it tells you what it is. It's usually right. There are, of course, Google the photo. I forgot what it's called. It has those things. But the thing about iNaturalist, which is great, I encourage everyone to go through iNaturalist rather than like Google, is because when you make the observation, you can log it in, and it's actually recorded in as a sighting of that organism, and scientists can use it, or other people can use it.
So it builds
in the database. So you're contributing, and even if you are a total beginner or you don't think you know anything, the beauty of it is that you in your tiny way are helping. And it's a lot of tiny ways of helping, but there's millions of us doing tiny ways, and that adds up to something.
Exactly.
Really big. And so iNaturalist and eBird, we didn't have that 20, 30 years ago, which
Did you have to look through like books?
we would have to look through books,
Yeah.
and take the copious notes. And
Yeah.
for birds, it wasn't so bad. Everything had been more or less described. But for plants, I mean, there was no book that included everything. If you land, yeah, you could be. There's so many plant species, so many insect species. Like beetles. I think in California there's 1,000 beetle species, for example, or maybe more. Where do you even start? There's no book that covers that.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of us who did start in, say, insects back when I was a kid, some of us stopped because we hit a wall.
Yeah.
But with iNaturalist, it's like we kindled our childhood interests, and so it's easy to get in, much easier to get in now.
Okay, and I guess the last question I have is, if there's only one thing that you would want listeners to take away from this conversation, what would that be?
Go outdoors and experience nature, and it doesn't have to be in the rainforest or romantic jungle or something like that. When they're talking about it, could
Like
just
mountains.
or mountains. It could just be that vacant lot nearby, and just walk through that slowly and look at the grass, look at what's on the grass, and look at the next day, look at it a month from now and see how it changes. You just be amazed what is out there, and then take the time to try to draw it, and then you'll see how beautiful these things are. I was teaching this nature journaling class at the Glasscock just now. Today was the last day, and one of the students asked me, how many scientists do this note-taking and journaling today anymore? And I have to admit, very few.
Not
probably.
many.
Yeah, because it's now everything's so digital, right? You're making a measurement, or you're taking some sort of measurement, and you record it in a computer. And that's of course all great, but I bet if you look around or ask around, how many people have notebooks, even in the lab, of detail that is probably they put on the computer, and certainly no sketches. I don't know anyone that's doing that, even in my field. And I think that's sad, because I think you miss a lot of the subtleties.
Yeah.
And I think so it's a dying art, but I think it's something that should be taught and should be encouraged again to come back, because it really hones your observational skills, and that's good for even if you're not going to be a scientist. I've seen some of the most creative businessmen or business persons, businesswomen, that I'm taking them out on a walk for birds, but they have zero interest in birds, for example, let's say, but they'll still notice something, and so I can tell they are observant, and they're taking those same observational skills into their work. In fact, it's a bit of a secret that prospective grad students that come to work with me, generally I will take them on a walk around campus. I don't tell them, it's kind of a test. And I'll point out some things, but they don't have to be a birder, they don't have to be, but if I point something out and they just sit there and stare with mouth agape and nothing, then I start to wonder, like, are you capable?
Yeah.
Have you lost your skills of observing? Are you just a robot of this current educational system of just taking tests?
Mm-hmm.
And that is not good. It's not the generation's fault of we're taking so many darn tests, but I see that you could be taking so many tests that you never have time to look. So so I take people out just to see if they're looking.
They have that, yeah.
Yeah.
So listen up, prospective grad students.
That's right. Yeah, so not so secret anymore, I guess.
But no, that's interesting, because I think when you take a picture or video or something, you're not really like actively trying to pay attention to all the different parts, right?
That's right. I don't think so.
Yeah, you're kind of just looking at the whole picture. Yeah, but when you take the time to draw something out, I think you're forced to like look at all the details.
Yeah, the way I look at it is a little bit like that. So now we have recorders recorded hearing. That's fine, but we're having a conversation. So you're listening to me, and I'm listening to you, but I look at it as like, say, so I might get two different types of people that I may interact with. One where they come, they got the notebook, and I'm talking, and they're going to write everything word for word down, but I know they're not listening.
Yeah.
And I know they're not getting anything. So that's no different than just record it. You might as well not even be here. Just record, right? And then they'll go back maybe, but a very different where you're actually engaging in a sense. And what you write down is not every single word, because when you're sketching nature, you can't draw every little detail. You have no time. You can't, what point do you stop? But what you're doing is you're interpreting. You're in a sense having a conversation. That's a little weird, but yes, with your subject, meaning that you see certain things and you are putting what you think are interesting things down there, but not necessarily word for word. And so the note taker having a conversation there is you're really having a conversation. You're trying to understand who this person is, or who your subject is. And if you were to write down everything, then I don't think it would work. You have your own interaction with that. And so part of it, there is the human element, which is not perfect. It can be flawed, but that's okay. I think with taking pictures, it's just too convenient. And don't get me wrong, I have a camera and I take photos and I love taking photographs, but it's just so easy, and you don't actually look at it in detail, because you might have 1,000 photos. You're not going to go through all of them, right?
Yeah, so. That's true. That's true.
But it's good to keep them there just in case.
Yeah.
But if you took notes at the same time, you can always go back to those photos. So it's not one or the other. I think both.
They're both valuable.
Both valuable.
Yeah.
And I think you can't just be sketching and note taking it. You want to use technology to your advantage, but you don't want to let technology just completely take you over.
Yeah.
So I use everything. I'm big on technology. Yeah.
I think that's fair. I think technology, like as you were mentioning with iNaturalist, I mean, it's made so many things so much more accessible.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll give you an example with iNaturalist. So iNaturalist is not just that it's trained. AI needs to be trained, right?
Yeah.
So it's trained by users like you and me, and there's 7 billion people in the world, and of the 7 billion, oddly, there's always some expert on something that's so esoteric. It might be
some niche.
There's some person that knows everything about banana cockroaches or something like that. Nothing you'd ever want to know anything about, but they would know. Anyway, and they train. It automatically trains. And I remember I was out in West Texas once, and I know some of my insects, but I'm not an insect expert. So there's so many, but I do remember what I've seen, and I know when I haven't seen something, but I don't know what it is. So we were out in West Texas, and I put up a black light, and I'm in a different area where I'm not familiar with, and all these insects were coming in. So my kid and I just said, what are these? I don't know. Just, in this case, take pictures. I took all the pictures. I was not taking notes here, just taking all these pictures. There were too many. I mean, we probably picked up like 200 species just there. Oh, wow. There's no way I could take notes. So I just take pictures. Random, not even thinking, truly a robot, completely opposite of everything I've just told you.
It's okay to be a robot sometimes.
Yeah. and sometimes you have to, right?
Yeah.
And then the idea was like back home I would go and sift through all of this gradually, and so I remember seeing this moth. It's actually called a bird dropping moth. Mm-hmm. There's a whole family or genus of these called bird dropping because they look like a bird dropping. They're black and white. Oh, wow. It's like a little bird doo-doo.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, and so I guess that's they camouflage that way so you don't eat them, right? Because most things won't eat a bird dropping.
That's true.
So it makes sense. Anyway, I knew it was a bird dropping, but I'd never seen that one before, and it was just like slightly different pattern of the black and white. But I didn't think much of it. And I put it on iNaturalist, and it couldn't tell me either.
Oh, wow.
Okay, interesting. But it's not surprising. There's so many out there. And a month later, one of those obsessed experts discovered my photo, and he goes, "Whoa, this is weird. I've never seen this myself." And this was an expert. And he posted, and then he asked somebody, another expert in that journal, "Have you ever seen this?" I've never seen it. And nobody had ever seen this moth.
Oh.
And then these guys went in to sleuth it out, and they finally just figured out that it was a moth that had not been photographed in the wild yet. It had been collected about 100 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
And it was sitting in some museum somewhere with a pin stuck through its back with a little mark. And it's like, that's it. It's like Hubbard's bird dropping moth. I can't remember the exact name, something like that. And of course, I had no idea. I just thought this was amazing. This is cool that I was just randomly shooting photos.
Yeah.
And I get this thing that had not been seen for 100 years, and sort of essentially I rediscovered it there. But these guys sorted it out.
Yeah.
And it turned out that this moth, the last time it had been collected 100 years ago, was only 10 miles away from where I photographed it.
Oh, wow.
So I happened to be in the right spot at the right time of the year. And once they figured that out, then other people started looking. And then within 5 years, a few more showed up in the general area, and one in Arizona. So they've been essentially rediscovered. It's crazy.
That's so cool.
What I'm just saying is that it's an amazing time to get into nature, and you don't have to be an expert with these iNaturalists, with eBird. You can contribute to citizen science, and there's still so much to be known, and just a random thing like that, you can find. You can find it doesn't happen often, but yeah. But dumb luck happens.
Yeah.
And it was great. All I knew is I'd never seen it, but it didn't mean much because I don't know this stuff there. But it was pretty cool. So I encourage everyone just to play. You like Pokemon Go? Did you ever play that?
I had it once, but I wasn't allowed to have like games on my phone.
Oh, that's probably good.
So,
well, I don't know if it's in fashion as much now, but maybe
there's still people who play it. I know a few people who still play it.
Maybe 10 years ago, it was huge.
Yeah.
And so if you like Pokemon Go, it is a little bit like Pokemon Go. And if you find something unusual, people will chase it. Or try to get
real life Pokemon.
Yes, but it's real life.
Yeah.
And which is nothing against Pokemon Go. We caught a Pokemon outside my office. Apparently, I started playing it just a little bit, but I never got deep into it. I did it because the students were trying to get me into it, so I tried. I got one of those. And maybe it's the first one they give you is a Pikachu. It was standing right out.
I think that's pretty common.
Yeah, I think it's pretty common. It's super common. So it wasn't special. Yeah. So it's like that. But you're contributing to our greater knowledge in science. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, because you're not even like an insect expert.
No.
So it was just. You just hadn't seen it before.
And a lot of people can get in, and very quickly they can get up to some level where they know quite a lot of the insects, but it's the person never been educated in insects, and I think that is very special when you can get everyone interested there. And we because you can get everyone interested, the amount of data that comes in is that no scientist, no group of scientists could ever accomplish that in many lifetimes, because we got millions of people using it, so it's great. Back when I was a teenager, remember birding, you were embarrassed to be a birder. You kept
your binoculars.
You kept it secret because there were no other young people interested in this stuff, and there was no social media, so you didn't know that there was in my town. Okay, fine, there was no one else. But in the next town or in this whole country, there's got to be some.
Yeah.
But you didn't have that ability to connect. So you thought you were the only young person. And since then, I met other people that were my same age now, that they also thought they were completely isolated, And now the beauty is you're not. It's not just in the U.S. It's the whole world. You
Yeah.
see so many people doing this, and I think back when I was, it's not only just there weren't many young people. The, the nature in the past, the access to nature, is was something more accessible to if you were a little bit more on the privileged side.
Yeah.
Upper middle class. Because one, you have to have time, or you have
Yeah,
to have
exactly.
access to the people who know that, right? And they are from those communities, and then for bird watching, you need a pair of binoculars, so it requires some
It's
financial
another investment.
investment. Yeah, um, and so in terms of people of color, young and people of color,
Yeah.
it's like there was
Nothing's the
no Venn diagram. There were so few, and I thought, God, I never met a black birder at that time,
Yeah.
or an Asian birder. But now it's great. You see so many,
Yeah, it's very diverse.
very
Yeah.
diverse. Um, yeah, it's a whole new world, and I think that's great. And I think part of it is that the barriers have been lowered to entering,
Yeah.
and people can even get started without a mentor. They don't need to be in that circle. They just discover these things online, and they can get pulled in just on their own. So there's a lot of self-taught kids now getting
Yeah.
in, and then they get into the community. I think the future is very bright now with that for conservation, because so many people are getting in there.
Big thanks again to Dr. Cin-Ty Lee for his insightful conversation. Now, let's hear from Sofia Soltes, a fellow student researcher, for her newest Critter Corner segment.
Hi everyone, it's Sophia, and welcome back to Critter Corner, where we dive into Houston's fascinating wildlife. In each episode, we feature experts and enthusiasts who share their favorite local animals, the roles in our ecosystem, and ways we can all support our community's biodiversity. For this episode of the series, we will be talking to Chris Valdez, a herpetology keeper at the Houston Zoo. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Hey, Sophia, thanks for having me.
Of course. To start off, can you tell me and our audience a bit about yourself and the work that you do?
Sure, I'm a herpetology keeper here at the Houston Zoo. Specifically for the last year and a half, I've worked directly with the Houston Toad Conservation Program.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming on, and we're so happy to have you. So, now that we know you a bit better, we're here to talk about your favorite local species. Can you tell us what species you'll be talking about today and why it's special to you?
Yeah, so today I'm going to be talking about the Houston toad. Like I was saying, it's the main part of my job currently. And so here at the Houston Zoo, we have a captive population of Houston toads, which is an endangered species from Texas. It was one of the first amphibians to be put on the endangered species list. So here at the zoo, we have a program where we have roughly 800 individuals that we breed and we release eggs back into the wild.
And what role does the Houston toad play in Houston's ecosystem?
Well, Houston toads, they historically there used to be a lot more of them than there are today. Toads are pretty much bottom of the food chain, so mainly they provide a huge source of food from everything from land invertebrates to the aquatic species as well, because they spend their developmental phase in the water as tadpoles before they make their way onto land. So from that aspect of it, they're not an apex predator by any means, but the abundance of them historically used to provide those lower, webs of the food chain.
Okay, and what led to the Houston toad becoming endangered?
Yeah, so Houston toads are actually what we call a habitat specialist, as opposed to the Gulf Coast toad. That if you live in Houston, the Gulf Coast toad is going to be the toad that you would see in your backyard, for example. Um, Gulf Coast toads are generalists, so they can pretty much live anywhere. Houston toads, on the other hand, they are more habitat specialists. They like a nice deep sandy soil mixed with a covered canopy for the most part. So, when you're looking at where the Houston toads are remaining today, they're no longer in Harris County, but we do find them in the Bastrop County, specifically in the Lost Pines ecoregion.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I could definitely see how that habitat may be hard to find in Houston these days, but what's one surprising fact about the Houston toad that people might not know?
So a fact that kind of relates to our program is these toads can lay thousands of eggs, I should say. So a female at any, any breeding season can lay anywhere from a couple hundred all the way to 10,000, 12,000 eggs even. And so part of our program is releasing those eggs back into the wild. So we're putting out anywhere from 1 million to this year was 1.8 million eggs back into the wild.
And what are some simple ways that people can support the Houston toad, either through programs at the Houston Zoo or through other organizations?
Yeah, so the best way, especially to help out our organization, is just come visit the zoo, really. It's not just our zoo that works with Houston toads. We have partnerships with Dallas Zoo, Fort Worth Zoo. So definitely go check out your zoos. And every time you go check out a zoo, some of those conservation dollars go back and fund our program. So check out the zoos. If you happen to have any land between the Houston area and Bastrop area, definitely reach out to your local Texas Parks and Wildlife and see what you can do maybe as far as like habitat restoration and, kind of helping out toads on the ground from there.
Thank you so much for sharing these tips. And thank you for joining us today, Chris. It's been such a pleasure to learn about the Houston toad. And to everyone listening, thank you so much for tuning in, and make sure to come back soon to learn more about these fascinating local species.
Awesome. Thanks, Sophia.
Thanks, Sophia. And lastly, we'll have Jaden Bray-Boyce, a fellow student researcher, who will tell you how to get involved this week in Houston.
Hey y'all, I hope you're doing well. If you're looking for a great way to volunteer in Houston this week, look no further. On January 18th, from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., join us at McGregor Park, where we'll be cleaning up trash and debris along Bray's Bayou. Taking charge and cleaning up our environment is critical to ensuring the well-being of all wildlife. If you're in need of something to do, then give us a hand to make Houston a cleaner, more beautiful place. All ages are welcome, just be sure to dress comfortably and appropriately for such activities. If you're looking for something a little more educational, then consider joining Green Wave Litter Cleanup at Antonio Marin Park, January 18th from 10 a.m. to noon. With your help, we can keep the environment clean. Through the Youth Works Texas Conservation Corps, litter cleanup will be coupled with environmental education for all ages. Keep in mind that if you are a minor, you just have to have a parent sign off on your participation. All tools will be provided, but be sure to wear closed-toed shoes and long pants. If either of these opportunities excite you, then please go to volunteerhouston.org where you can register today. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day and happy volunteering.
Thanks, Jaden. If you have questions or ideas for what you'd like featured on Gulfstreams, leave a voicemail at 713-348-4081 or email us at westonT@rice.edu. A quick reminder that you can catch up on Gulfstreams anytime through our podcast, available on all major podcast platforms. If you enjoy the show, please like and subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. Gulfstreams is a co-production of KPFT Houston and Rice's Center for Environmental Studies, with support from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation and the Rice Sustainability Institute's Eco Studio. Produced by Weston Twardowski. Co-produced by Joseph Campana. Audio engineer Rico Henriquez. Original music by Carter Dean. Research support provided by Jaden Bray-Boyce, Sophia Soltesz, and Nomin Rentsendorj. Stay tuned for the R&R show with Ronnie Renfro and Tom Richards, here on KPFT Houston 90.1 FM, Galveston 89.5 FM, and Huntsville 89.7 FM.